Hello and welcome to the fourth video in this series, Understanding the Guitar. This is where you're going to hopefully feel rewarded for working your way through the other three videos. I'm purposely kind of making these videos very stripped down. I think that there's a lot of value in you figuring some of this stuff out on the neck yourself. When I was learning a lot of this, I actually drew a lot of diagrams, When I was in college and supposed to be taking notes, I would be drawing scale diagrams and things like that. So I'm just giving you the information. You might have to watch these videos several times to absorb these ideas, but I think that this is the core of what is most useful to me after playing guitar for pretty soon. I'll have been playing guitar for 40 years, so it's a long time I've been playing guitar pretty much every day. So I'm trying to pass along what I think are the most important things to know. And so just to review really quickly, we've looked at three intervals that I've been calling structural intervals. They're the intervals that make up chords. They're the intervals that make up bass lines, the real large-scale structures in music. And again, we're going to stick with the good old A note on the 5th fret of the 6th string. That's going to be our root note. And we've got an octave above that, which is another A note, so that's on the 7th fret of the 4th string. That's the first interval we learned. Then we learned the 5th, which is kind of a reinforcing note for the root in the octave. And then we learned the 3rd. So if I take this A note on the 4th string and I make a major 3rd on the 3rd string, then we have a major chord, A major. I can lower that 3rd by a fret, which is called a half step. We have an A minor. And this would be called an A major triad and an A minor triad. And you want to get to the point where you can find minor and major triads anywhere on the neck. And you're going to be memorizing them as kind of static shapes that you can play as little chords. But if you work your way through the sequence of root and then learn where the 5ths are and then learn where the 3rds are, you're also going to be able to play them in a very kind of fluid way and pick and choose which of them you want to play. Okay. Now, the study of playing just the notes of triads all over the neck, one way to approach that would be to play what are called arpeggios. So you're playing all the notes of an A minor triad, for instance, in this part of the neck. And that's a whole set of shapes to get your fingers to learn if you want to play it across the strings. What the thirds video covered was simply playing little 3-string groups. If you want to expand it out to where you can play it across all the strings, like that, that would be the next step. And that's a project. At some point, I'll make a video covering all those arpeggios, but I'd like to keep moving and give you the big picture with these Understand the Guitar videos. There's a book called Chord Tone Soloing by Barrett Tagliarino. Really fantastic book, and it's the only book I've found that covers a lot of what I'm talking about here. So he has a section where he gives you all the arpeggios, and you can obviously find them lots of other places too. But Chord Tone Soloing, great book. I highly recommend it. Okay, so now we're going to talk about scales, and we're really going to be able to play some music. Scales are usually presented as these sequences of notes, and if you see them diagrammed out, it's sort of like a string of pearls. It's a whole bunch of notes in a line, and there's a tendency to kind of just learn them, run them up and down, get your fingers used to where they are, where the notes are, which you obviously need to do, but the approach we're taking is to build up our knowledge of scales by learning the most important notes first. So let's take the 1st, the 3rd, and the 5th that we know, and let's take this shape right here. This is an A major triad, so I'm holding the 7th fret, 4th string, 6th fret, 3rd string, 5th fret, 2nd string. That's root, third, fifth. Okay, so those are the three notes we've been focusing on. Now, there are two notes. Oh, and let's go to this note too. Why not? So, if you're able to play a beginner F, try playing that F shape on the 5th fret. So, we have root, third, fifth, octave. We're going to add two notes to this, and we're going to have a pentatonic scale. So a pentatonic scale being a 5-note scale. We've already got 3 notes, right? The first note we're going to add is called a major second. So we're going to take our A note here on the first string, and the major second is 2 frets above the root. Okay, so 7th to 5th fret. In the key of A, that's a B note. So we're going B, A, B, A. Okay. The other note we're going to add is the major 6th. That is 2 frets above the 5th, which is on the 2nd string. Exact same move. First finger, third finger. Okay. Now, this is the octave, right? So we're actually playing a note above the octave here. So there's another major second down here on the 4th fret of the 3rd string. So there's a few different ways to finger that. Let's try this. 3rd, 1st, 3rd, 1st, and then jump down here, 3rd, 1st, and then jump back here. You can do that. See how that works. If you want to keep your second finger here, you can also do 1st, 3rd, 1st, 2nd, 1st, 3rd, 1st, 3rd. Okay, that is a major pentatonic scale. We've taken the triad, major triad, and we've added a note above the 5th and a note above the 1st. And we've got a very pretty, very sweet sounding major pentatonic scale. But notice how I'm using the triad as my home bass. Jimi Hendrix was a master of this. Since he was the only guitar player in his trio, a lot of times he would hold a chord and then he would just hammer on those extra notes. And get this thing that's kind of in between a chord and a scale. Playing the notes of a scale while you're holding a chord. And that's kind of what we're talking about. Like I said at the very beginning of this series, not all notes are created equal. And if you're playing an A major pentatonic scale, these are the most important notes. The 1st, the 3rd, and the 5th. And the other ones want to resolve to the notes of the chord. So that major second wants to resolve down to the 1st. That major 6th wants to resolve down to the 5th. These are all notes from the major scale, by the way, which should help you remember the name. So it's a major second, it's from the major scale. It's a major 6th, it's from the major scale. These are all very familiar notes to you because they're all from good old do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, okay? We've basically taken a major scale, da, 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 and we've taken out 2 notes. So we have... All right. That is the major pentatonic scale. What I'm going to do in this video is I'm not going to show you every pattern of those scales. That's a big project. But we're going to look at the sound and the structure of these scales. And then from there, learning them all over the neck is the next step. Let's take our A major triad. Let's lower the middle note, the 3rd, to the 5th fret, and we get an A minor triad. Okay, we're going to add 2 notes to this to get the minor pentatonic scale. Going to add 2 different notes. One is our friend the 4th. So I don't know if you remember from the video about the 5th interval. This note right here is the 4th. One way to find it is here's our root note, right? Our A note. And if you remember, the 5th is skip a string, skip a fret. That's the 5th. The fourth is always 2 frets below the fifth. Okay? It's also the next note after the third. So here we've got a minor third. The minor third and the fourth are a fret apart. The major third and the fourth are right next to each other. So right now we're going to play A minor triad, add that fourth. So this is 1, flat 3, 4, 5. And the other note we're going to add is above the fifth here. In the major pentatonic, we added the major sixth, which is 2 frets above. We're going to add the minor or flatted seventh, which is 3 frets above. So use your pinky. Minor seventh. So far we got root, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 7, and then the octave. And just like in the major pentatonic, these notes want to resolve. This note wants to resolve either down to the fifth, or it can also go to the first. Okay, so now another project would be work that out all over the neck. There are a lot of resources out there for learning the pentatonic scales. Another book I would recommend is a great book called Blues You Can Use, John Ganapes. Hope I'm pronouncing his last name right. Great book. It'll take you through all the major pentatonic and minor pentatonic, and you learn a bunch of really cool solos. Blues You Can Use. We've looked at 2 pentatonics. There's an awful lot of music there. If you work out your major and minor pentatonics all over the neck, and if you have those underlying major and minor triad shapes in your fingers, that might be all you ever need. But let's look at a couple more intervals. We'll look at the 7-note scales now, and let's go back to that seventh. So the seventh is an interesting interval because it can either be what I would call a melodic interval. So you're using it, so in this scale you're kind of using it as a note in a sequence in a melody, in a solo. But the seventh is also actually the next note in a chord if we decide to expand a chord out from a basic triad. So if you were going to build another note on top of your triad to make a more complex chord, the next note you would add would be a seventh. And if you remember back to our thirds, the rule about our thirds, the seventh is a third above the fifth note. So what I mean by that is, okay, here's the fifth note in the key of A. A minor seventh is this distance away, like we just looked at. And that distance is called a minor third. So if we call this the 1, in other words, instead of the 5, if we decide that this is we're measuring from here, then we have a minor third. And then the major seventh, you have to skip 3 frets. So the major seventh, that's kind of starting to be a little bit of an awkward leap. You can find the same note on the 4th fret of the first string. And notice that's a major third shape. So we have this interesting shape here. I'm putting my pinky, third finger, second finger, playing this diagonal. So in other words, I'm using my pinky, third, and second to play this A triad, A major triad, and then I'm adding this note on the 4th fret of the first string. That would be an A major 7th chord. We're using the 7th note from the major scale, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Sometimes called the leading tone, leading note, because it leads to the root, the tonic. Okay, so that 7th note can be used as a structural tone. It's going to sound pretty jazzy, as you can see. Or it can be used melodically. So let's look at this. This is the major scale. We've now looked at all the notes of the major scale. We're going to take our A major triad, but we're going to start with a pinky. And we're going to go A, the first note, to that major second, which is on the 4th fret of the 3rd string, to the major third, and then the 4th is the next note. The 4th is right next to the major third. Do, re, mi, fa. Our 5th, major sixth, our major seventh, and our octave. Okay, so now we have a 7-note scale. We can kind of see how each of these things resolves. The 7th wants to resolve up to the 1. The 6th wants to resolve down to the 5th. The 4th can resolve down to the 3rd. It's a half step, so it really wants to do that. Or it can also jump up to the 5th. And then the 2nd tends to want to fall down to the 1st. So I hope that shows you that in this major scale there are these tendencies of the notes. The notes of the triad are going to feel like you've come to rest. The other notes are going to want to resolve to the notes of the triad. And then, like I said, that 7th note, if you sit on it, you're going to have a very jazzy sound. So if there's an A chord going on and you decide to really emphasize that 7th, then it's going to sound like a chord tone, like a tone from a major 7th chord. But you can also use it just melodically, so you'd be kind of passing through it. And then it's going to register as more of a melodic interval. Okay, so let's look at the minor scale. We've covered 3 scales so far: the major pentatonic, the minor pentatonic, and the major scale. We're going to cover the minor scale. And those are the 4 core scales that if you have those down on the guitar, everything else is really a matter of adjusting a note here and there to access the modes and all the other kind of specialized scales. So this is actually going to be an example of that, because we're going to start with the major scale as kind of our gold standard, and we're going to flat a few notes to get our minor scale. All right, so first to second to third, that was the major scale. We're going to flat the 3rd, so and still have the 4th in the same place, and still have the 5th in the same place. Flat the 6th. The 6th was on the 7th fret. It's going to go down to the 6th fret. So, and then the 7th is going to be flatted too. So our major 7th is here. We're going to go to this 7th. Okay, so here's the best way to finger it. 3rd finger is going to play this. 1st finger is going to slide and cover both these 2 notes. So. First, second, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7, 1. Okay, a lot of the same tendencies here. The 7 has less of a tendency to go to the 1 than the major 7, but that's still kind of its main destination. The 6, the flat 6, wants to go down to that 5. 4 can go up to the 5 or down to the 3. And then the 3 is flat, wants to go down to the 2, to the 1. There's a flat 7 below the root. If our root is here, the flat 7 is always going to be 2 frets below. Just like the major 7th is 1 fret below. That is the minor scale. So again, there are plenty of resources out there to show you scale patterns all over the neck. And that's not really the purpose of these videos. These videos are to show you why each note is important, how the notes are different, which notes are more important than other notes. And so again, with those 4 core scales, I would make that the priority. I would ignore all other scales until you feel like you really have these down, because with the major scale, the minor scale, the major pentatonic scale, and the minor pentatonic scale, you can play an awful lot of the music that's out there. And if you don't have those down, the other scales are not necessarily going to make a lot of sense, because they, like I said, they're variations and slightly different versions of the major and minor scales. So having the basic scales, the core scales, in your fingers, in your ears, should be your first goal. I'm going to make one more video where I just kind of pull all these ideas together and show you how I would use them to make music. And please let me know in the comments if you have any questions. And thanks again for watching.